You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Breaking news, current events, and trending stories on The Morning Takeover at 9. You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Breaking news, current events, and trending stories on The Morning Takeover at 9. Good morning, everyone. You're listening to 92.7 WKRA FM. I am Wisdom's Daughter. I'm here with James Mack. This is The Morning Takeover, and we have an awesome show lined up for you guys today. Biden reacts to the Supreme Court ruling granting absolute immunity. So ultimately, the president is now a king. We're going to be talking about all that and more for you today. But first, we've got James with your local weather. James?
And good morning, Wisdom, and to all of our listeners. The south winds are back, and the temperatures will be climbing for the rest of the week, as humidity values also will be climbing for the next few days. Highs will be back in the 90s for the 4th of July holiday, and also we might have some scattered showers in between that will become more likely as the weeks end as well. Also, your weather experts are telling us to keep our eyes closely on Hurricane Beryl, which is still a week away from having impact on the western Gulf of Mexico. And whether or not it would have any impact on the Mid South, that's yet to be determined. That probably be earlier next week at its soonest. It was a little bit cooler this morning as the temperatures will rise on today. We're looking at temperatures rising mainly around 94 degrees with a southeast wind of 5 to 10 miles an hour. The winds are calm right now. Tonight, the clouds and the increasing clouds will come, but there will be clear skies, and it will be lows in the lower 70s, like around 74, with a light and variable wind. But right now, we have 72 in Oxford, 71 in Olive Branch, and in the Memphis Shelby County area, it's right now 70 degrees. Please stay hydrated as the temperatures going to climb later on in the day, they will be climbing. So please keep yourself hydrated. Remember your pets, and remember that if you go to any outlets or any shopping or doing your last minute 4th of July shopping, that you please, if you have passengers that are young, don't leave them into cars. Don't leave them unattended. Take them inside with you. And that is our weather from our news desk, and back to Wisdom.
All right, and just a little bit more about Hurricane Beryl. This hurricane is actually making some historic records already. This storm grew very quickly after it formed, reflecting hot ocean conditions that could bring more dangerous hurricanes. So here's why there's a bit of a concern. Over the course of a few short days, Hurricane Beryl rapidly intensified from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane. A Cat 5 is the kind of hurricane that can uplift trees out of the ground. It can uplift cars and trucks. It can level houses and remove them from their foundation. It can ultimately remove trucks as well. It can remove trains off the tracks. This quick escalation was a direct result of the above average sea surface temperatures, as well as a harbinger of what is to come this hurricane season. Now, in Hurricane Beryl's case, again, it became a tropical storm late Friday night, meaning that it had sustained winds speeds of more than 39 miles per hour. Now, by Saturday afternoon, it had become the season's first hurricane, becoming a Category 1 with wind speeds of 75 miles per hour. On Sunday, it became the earliest Category 4 hurricane on record, with winds of more than 170 miles per hour. And on Monday night, after it had devastated Curacao, a small I may not be pronouncing that right. I guess it's Curacao, if I'm saying that right. It's a small island north of Grenada. Beryl became a Category 5 hurricane with wind speeds of more than 150 miles per hour. A hurricane that intensifies faster than that, or that fast, can be very dangerous, as it allows less time for people in those areas projected to be affected to prepare and evacuate. Late last October, Hurricane Otis moved up by multiple categories in just one day, slamming into Acapulco, Mexico as a Category 5 hurricane that unalived at least 52 people. This is a very dangerous storm. So those of you that may have family members that live in the Caribbean islands, check on your family members. As James has said, it's going to take some time before it reaches the Mexican shores. Right now, it is still off the coast of Venezuela. It's not far from Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados. It will swing past the Dominican Republic, swing past Cuba, going right in between before ultimately hitting the coast of Mexico by next Sunday at 2 a.m. By that point, it will be downgraded to a tropical storm. But again, this is a very dangerous storm. So look out, reach out to your family members and check on them. And those of you who are tuning in via Facebook, again, we're showing visuals of what this storm looks like. This is a huge storm. And when we talk about where it's passing over, that's the eye of the storm. But anyone in Venezuela, anyone in any of the Caribbean islands, from Antigua and Barbuda to Martinique, Barbados, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, Curacao, Aruba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and onward, including Jamaica, all those Caribbean islands are being impacted by this storm. So we want to make sure that we remember them and that we are prepared for whatever need they may have once this storm has passed over. So yeah, dangerous storm, and we're going to continue monitoring that throughout the week. So we had a very interesting weekend. And a very interesting start to our week. So on last Thursday was the first presidential debate. We talked a lot about that. And then come Monday, the Supreme Court has made a decision to provide current and former presidents absolute immunity. Donald Trump is entitled to that immunity. He's been given absolute immunity. This is what he wanted. This is what he wanted. This ruling makes a distinction between official actions of a president, which will have immunity now, and those of a private citizen. Ultimately, what we are saying is that the president is now a king. The Supreme Court has ultimately given absolute power to the president. This is exactly what Donald Trump wanted. We talked about this at great length in previous shows. We talked about Donald Trump wanting to be a dictator, wanting this to be an autocracy and not a democracy. We talked about his plan of wanting to give the presidents more power. Interestingly enough, it seems that for Donald Trump, Christmas has come quite early. Donald Trump got his wish. Now the Supreme Court has decided that the president will have ultimate power. They will have the ability to do whatever they want to do, and it will be accepted. There are many people reacting. We're going to hear Biden's reaction to this. There are those ultimately saying that the president is now free to commit crimes and get away with it. There is nothing now standing in Donald Trump's way. We're going to talk about it. We're going to hear from some of you. But first, we're going to hear from our current president on his thoughts on the Supreme Court's ruling. So we're going to jump to that now. We'll hear what Biden, how he responded. He did come forward. And let me just say that Biden, although people have had a lot to say about his performance during the debate, President Biden spoke very clear, very well in the remarks that he delivered on the Supreme Court's ruling. So we're going to listen to that now.
Good evening. The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking at the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it was one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, to find the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute. And that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it'll depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you.
So in all standards, ultimately, as our current president has said, the president is now a king. James, what are your thoughts? What's your immediate reaction to hearing the Supreme Court's decision to grant Donald Trump immunity for what they're calling quote unquote official acts, but ultimately the fact that the president now has absolute power.
The news broke yesterday as it came across our news desk, and there was an immediate scramble, I believe, all over this country to the news of a branch of government, one of our three branches of government, giving or allowing an individual to become a king, as you say. There are very, very disturbing, based on my personal opinion and the opinions of others, I believe that the very principle of the founding of this country had been just erased. We fled as a young colony of England to establish a nation that we would have no rule by king, but it will be ruled by the words and the decision of its people. And to see that these justices, and even one that looks like me, after all that we've been through, out of all the things that this country has endured, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to the various battles that we had, just to hold on to this mere democracy, to hold on to what we believe that is true even today in our hearts, that we, the people, in order to form a more perfect union and to establish justice, ensure to make domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense, and to promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty. Our liberty was taken or decided to be taken by the judicial branch of government with the dissent of, and I'll say this, the women of power, the sheroes in my life. Judge Sotomayor had said it best, and she described the urgency of now that we live in a kingdom where now we'll be under a dictator. And let me back a little bit. Not only this decision affects the seat of the president right now, and I'm facetious when I say this. Well, Mr. Biden, you got a chance to change things. You can the decisions that you can make to eliminate your competition and all. Go ahead, Wisdom. I heard what you said.
Oh, we were losing you for a second.
Okay.
We're gonna no, it's okay. You just cut out for a second. We're gonna hear from the people in just a moment. But for those of you who are just joining us, we're talking about the Supreme Court's ruling granting current and former presidents absolute immunity. And ultimately, what that means is that the president has absolute power, or in other words, the president is now a king. The Supreme Court declared on Monday that former presidents have immunity for their official actions, upending the case against Donald Trump over his attempts to subvert his 2020 election loss. We've been talking about that a lot this week. And ultimately, what they have said, and I quote, we conclude that under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power requires that a former president have some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office. At least with respect to the president's exercise of his core constitutional powers, this immunity must be absolute. As for his remaining official actions, he is also entitled to immunity. At the current stage of proceedings in this case, however, we need not and do not decide whether that immunity must be absolute or instead whether a presumptive immunity is sufficient. That all sounds great, but ultimately the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity will reverberate in Fulton County, Georgia, where Trump and 14 of his allies have been criminally charged in a sprawling racketeering indictment. In January, Trump's lawyers filed a motion arguing that the case should be dismissed on immunity grounds. Well, Donald Trump got what he wanted. But prosecutors have been waiting on the Supreme Court and have said that they will file a response to Trump within 2 weeks of the issuance of the immunity ruling. Well, again, that may well have been, all of these cases now are going to be pushed to the side. Ultimately, as I said, Donald Trump has gotten what he wants. Okay. We're going to hear from a few people that are following us on YouTube. And so one listener said, where was this Biden, referring to his response at the debate? I agree with you. Another listener said, I think the key word is official actions. Other reactions from our listeners. This is horrible news. Remember the show, A Handmaid's Tale. Women's rights were taken away. If we lose the House and the Senate, it's all over for us and future generations. The policies that are from under the next administration will affect our people for a century. We need to get to the polls at jet speed. Another listener says there are consequences for not voting and or voting for the wrong people. People don't want to discuss politics, but don't realize how politics affect our daily lives. And another listener asked, so does this ruling mean his sentence will be dismissed? Well, this is what he's asking for. He's asking that they delay his sentencing. So ultimately, we are at the mercy of Judge Merchan. And the other cases that Donald Trump is facing here in Georgia and a number of other states, looks like that is going to be pushed back. It's going to go into lower courts now. The Supreme Court has stepped away. They're turning a blinded eye. They have left the room. They have left the building. They have left the country. And so these cases will go to lesser courts. And for that reason, going to lesser courts, it's going to take a lot of time for them to get through, which means they likely won't get to those cases until after the election. Our country, the future of our country, our democracy is in jeopardy. But we want to, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to hear the remainder of James's thoughts and his reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling. We'll be right back after the break.
You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Breaking news, current events, and trending stories on The Morning Takeover at 9.
Butters and Black Soap offers high-quality, handcrafted butters, black soaps, and oils made with all-natural ingredients that improve the appearance of hair, skin, and nails. Try Butters and Black Soap's amazing collection of African black soaps sourced from Ghana and infused with ingredients such as turmeric, oatmeal, sea moss, coconut milk, activated charcoal, and more to promote healthy-looking skin. Say goodbye to dry, cracked skin with the Sea Moss Body Cream by Butters and Black Soaps. This non-greasy formula will leave your skin soft and supple. If you want to achieve a natural, healthy glow, try one of their whipped shea butters. Indulge in the luxurious feel of African black soaps and more by Butters and Black Soap. Shop now at www.butters_blacksoap.com. Use custom code WISDOM for a 15% discount. Shop now.
And we are back. You're listening to The Morning Takeover with James and Wisdom on 92.7 WKRA. We are talking about the Supreme Court's ruling granting present and former presidents absolute immunity. We're talking about the fact that the president ultimately is now a king. We're talking about the fact that Donald Trump has ultimately gotten what he wanted. We're going to hear from James in just a minute. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the court has been consumed by a corruption crisis. She pledged to file articles of impeachment against the justices, though she did not specify which. The last time a Supreme Court justice was successfully impeached was in 1804, and it would require that she and her fellow Democrats win significant support from Republicans who control the House to even bring any impeachment to a vote. And so, James, Tell us more on your thoughts, your reactions to hearing the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity, and that Donald Trump ultimately has absolute immunity for what they're calling official acts while he was in the presidency.
This decision has caused such a stir, and it has people really bent out of shape. The president said it best. I respect the limitations of power. With power comes limitations. You got to be careful how you use them. And I'm not saying, and one of my friends has says, the president is still the president. Mr. Biden is still our president. And he said, everybody's acting like Trump has won already. We have a remedy for this. We have a remedy to vote. We have to make sure and secure a Congress that will uphold the original standards of the Constitution. But one thing I wanted to bring out is that Justice Sotomayor, who wrote the dissent along with her other associate justices, Justice Jackson and Justice Keegan, she says, and it's as powerful, these words that she says. She says that we're saying that a president can order SEAL Team 6 to unalive their political rivals. She said, with this power and with this authority that we enhance and given to the seat or the office of president, he can organize a military coup to hold power for as long as he wants and not be prosecuted, not be brought to justice. There will be no justice for this immune person. The president can take bribes in exchange for favors and pardons and contracts, and he can do all kinds of things. And she says, even if this nightmare scenario plays out, and she prays that it never do, the damage that can be done by this decision of the justices of the Supreme Court will make our laws. We might as well throw them out. We might as well throw them out of the window. There's no law and order, even at the highest levels of government. And my concern that I had when I heard the news was, so does this mean that all of the court cases and all of the prosecutions that are before, even in the state of Georgia right now, what does that do? And I think it brings more questions than anything. Our president really articulated and stood firm. Are you listening, people? Are you listening? He stood firm and spoke clearly and said, this is a problem. Now, if he was selfish or if he was thinking another way, well, you gave absolute immunity to me. And what if he flipped the tables and said, ain't going to be an election? There's not going to be any Medicare. We're not doing anything. I'm going to do what I say I want to do, and nobody can stop me. Literally a blank ticket to do what he wants to do. And I want to hear what other people have to say, because I think that we're at a point in our country, we're at a crossroads. And that crossroads is the crossroads of democracy, or are we going into a dictatorship? For the very first time in our history, we might as well get the crown jewels or borrow some from somebody, or go steal some, because the president can go anywhere and do what he wants to do according to the Supreme Court and get away with it. So we might as well go get him a robe and a scepter and get him a throne and all those other things, get him some handmaidens and everything.
Stop giving him ideas, please. don't give him any ideas. But you know what?
He got me spinning. Go ahead. Yeah.
The Republicans are celebrating. They said that this is a big win for democracy and our Constitution. Quote unquote, official acts cannot be illegally prosecuted, which ultimately gives Donald Trump a license to do whatever he wants to do. This was in his plan. We talked about it on last week. This was part of his plan. He wanted to give presidents more power. And one of the things you said to me when we were talking is that, what if he were to be elected president and then he just didn't leave office? Can you imagine? So I'm going to ask a question that has an obvious answer. Is this dangerous for our country, for our democracy? You said it yourself. And we heard Biden say that he is someone who respects the office. He respects the Constitution. He is not going to operate with absolute power and overstep his bounds. He is still going to adhere to what has been in this country for centuries. Can we trust Donald Trump to do the same? We're going to hear from one of our listeners. So we have a listener, believe out of New York. Lady BB is back with us, and we're going to hear what she has to say. Lady BB, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so first thing, Lady BB, we need you to mute your television, your radio, whatever you have going on. We want to go ahead and have you turn those things off or go ahead and mute them. And then we want to hear your thoughts. Lady BB has been on the show before, very impassioned when it comes to our country, politics, quite knowledgeable. And so, Lady BB, go ahead. Let's hear from you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
James, and good morning, Wisdom's daughter. I am very upset along with everyone else. But people need to understand that this has been in the planning stage for years. The Supreme Court is supposed to be impartial, but as we can see, they are partial. And the 6 members of the Supreme Court are Republicans, and they are just carrying out Project 2025. Project 2025 is a plan that was developed by right-wing groups such as the Heritage Foundation. 3 of your justices were recommended by the Heritage Foundation. And the overall plan of this 2025 is to change this country from being a democracy to becoming a autocracy. And this is the first step. When they say that the president now has total immunity against official acts, but they could not identify an official act from an unofficial act, because the plan is, even once it goes down to the lower court and they try to identify his acts as private, Trump will have the ability to go to the higher court and file a case against it. So it's a win-win situation for Donald Trump. And what's upsetting me is the media and many of the people. President Biden has proven himself over and over. Are we going to forget what he has accomplished in the 3.5 years that he has been president with his performance for 90 minutes? He himself said he's older, okay? It was too much pre-debate planning. He had a lot of stuff in his head. You can see that. Right afterwards, he went to the post-debate crowd of his supporters, and he was back to his normal self. He spoke in North Carolina, a whole different President Biden. So I would not condemn the man for his performance of 90 minutes when he has accomplished more than any president in this country in 3.5 years. Now, the focus is on President Biden's performance for 90 minutes, but what about his competitor, the xenophobic, white nationalist, white supremacist, bona fide racist, known sexist, documented bigot, celebrated insurrectionist, election denier, wannabe politician, 4 times indicted, twice impeached, recognized sexual assaulter, convicted fraud perpetrator, 91 felon charges in 4 states, who doesn't give a damn about people, Black people more specifically, and minorities. We as a people have got to unify. we see what is going on, we have to vote. We have to make sure that President Biden and Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is reelected. We have to make sure that we elect our senators so that we can have a majority in the Senate. And most of all, we have to make sure that the House of Representatives are a Democratic majority, that we make the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries the majority of the House. So I encourage the people to focus on what it is we have to do at this point. We have to vote. We have to encourage others to vote. Never mind speaking at Mali, oh, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. If you want a democracy, if you want the freedoms that we have had, we have got to vote for President Biden's reelection.
And you
That's
make an
what I
interesting point, Lady BB. Good morning again to you. You make an interesting point. Where do we go from here? And there are remedies that we do have. We got to get out and we have to vote. I agree with you 100%. And I think that you got a feedback coming into my headset. If you can turn down your device, Lady BB, it would be real helpful to us. And Wisdom, like I said before, we're listening from one of our listeners. We're listening to her, and we're listening to the concerns of the people, that the likelihood of the turning back of the advancements that we have are at stake. And Lady BB, you're exactly right. But Wisdom, I'm just floored.
I don't know, James, if because we're still processing all of this. I don't know if our country, and especially the young people, really truly understand what is happening, what has been happening. As Lady BB said, and she came ready. Said Lady BB, sounded like you had some notes. I could hear paper turning. Lady BB came ready today.
She's on top of it.
We're
She's
gonna
on
hear
top of it.
She is. We'll hear some more from her as well. But I don't know if our young people are really understanding the gravity of the situation. I mean, again, affirmative action no longer exists. Then they came for reproductive rights. They overturned Roe versus Wade. Now we have it where ultimately, our president, if he or she so chooses, can operate this country like a dictatorship, can now have absolute power. Donald Trump has said in his own plan, this is not our words, this is his words, that, he wants to prosecute his adversaries. He wants to go after the Biden family. He wants to potentially be able to use the military at his beck and call to get rid of, those who don't agree with him. And he would legally now be able to do it and get away with it. Would you? So here's the thing. This is the game changer for me, because I try to look at things from both sides. I know who I'm voting for. I'm not here to persuade anybody one way or another. But for those who, are and have been Trump supporters, right now, the tables have really turned and shifted, because the question was, is Donald Trump qualified? I'm no longer asking that question. We already know the answer. I'm asking a different question to Republicans and Trump supporters. I'm asking, would you trust Donald Trump with absolute power? This is a game changer now. This is not what was on the table before, is no longer on the table. We've got to look at this with a new set of lenses, because now we're talking about people who are voting for a man who we know has gone off the rails before. We know what he's gotten away with when there were supposed to be laws in place. Now, SCOTUS has backed off, and they're like, the president, ultimately what they're saying is the president is a king. The president is above the law. The president can ultimately do whatever he wants to do and can't. And everything can be considered official acts. There's a reason why they are not defining what is an official act, because they want Donald Trump to be able to claim anything that he wants to do, and not just say Donald Trump, whoever's in the presidency. And I'll get to that in a second. Because why now? Why do this now? Right? Very strategic. Because I believe the Supreme Court justices, these are Donald Trump's friends. I'm going to put them up again. All right. I believe that these people are assuming that Donald Trump is going to win, They're assuming that he's going to win. We'll give him absolute power. He can do whatever he wants to do, right? Donald Trump wanted to make America great again. Well, he is on his way to getting his agenda pushed through, and he's not even in the presidential seat yet. He hasn't even been elected yet, but he's already getting things on his wish list, his to-do list, getting ultimately pushed through. One of our listeners said, "Thank you, Lady BB. Project 2025 lays out the game plan for MAGA people, conservatives, and those who would roll back progress by marginal groups." And another listener said that the Supreme Court has been bought. I would have to agree with that. There's definitely some corruption going on. But how can it be that those of us who are on the under end of it, the people, can still support this man with everything that he's done? And now one of our listeners said, I think they're trying to steal the next election for Trump. Okay, they're trying. So, I don't know if there's anyone listening or anyone who's joining us via Facebook. Come into the comments. If you are a Republican, if you are a Trump supporter, I would love to hear your thoughts. How do you feel now? Does this change the game for you, knowing that this man now will have a license to do whatever he wants to do? He can ultimately do what James said, which is to decide that we're not going to have elections anymore. We don't need an election. I'm going to stay president until I'm no longer on this earth. James, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I wanted to say that Project 2025, a lot of people are, I got a message and someone was asking, all you have to do if you'd like to find that information is to go to your search engine and it will come up. We have I have it. You have, okay. And it's
900 pages, James.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's a manifesto of disaster. It's a manifesto to destroy democracy, and the destruction and the guise of and the deception of the decision of this court is official acts. Well, what is an official act? President does a whole lot of things under the guise of national security that we will not know as individual citizens because of the secrecy of the things to keep our democracy together and to prevent any harm to come to us as a nation. And this power that anyone that has in his hand, and I agree with you when you say that it is a possibility that this president can use this power in any way that they can, and they're predicting that he's going to win. I don't want people to get it in their minds that he has won already. Don't have that mindset. We have an opportunity as citizens to do something about this. Yes, I know that we have to be non-biased on political things, but I agree with Lady BB when she said that in order for us to even keep the stability that we have right now in the midst of all of this confusion is to get our tails up and go vote. Registering is fine. Talking all that garbage in the barbershop or talking all that stuff over here or at the car wash or whatever you do and gathering around and saying that this man who literally told us what he's going to do and now he would have, listen to what I'm saying, would have the authority to do that. If he gets in, he ain't getting in if we got anything to do with it. And if we get out and do what we really supposed to do, our duty to protect our democracy by making sure this tyrant doesn't get in. And yes, I've got to call it like I see it. We have a job to do. Get up and go vote. Plan now. Do your research. We're so analytical these days. We're geniuses in what we do. Instead of making a common sense decision by saying, hey, listen, this country is at stake. Everything that has been gained from civil rights, from affirmative action, which this same court has eliminated. So that means that the same person that's one of the persons that are sitting on the Supreme Court that has benefited from affirmative action by his ties with other groups and other voices that have been talking to him and paying his money to, it's a natural fact of what they were doing, has given this person an opportunity. He has turned his back completely against those institutions and those standards that have been set in this country to make him who he is today. It's a shame that the late Justice Thurgood Marshall, who he took his place from, is probably rolling over in his grave thinking, how did we get to this point? I think that it is really a travesty, not of just justice, but of sheer democracy. We're the leading voice of freedom, good, bad, or indifferent about this country, good, bad, or indifference about where we stand on things. We have an obligation and a responsibility, folks, to stop this person before he gets in there. Don't put it in the atmosphere. He's gone. Put it in the atmosphere. We got to vote as never before. We got to do better than the Obama numbers. We got to do better than the Clinton numbers. We got to do better than it has. We got to get up and vote better than we have ever voted. And Wisdom, I think that our audience is agreeing, because we got to get up and do what we have to do. Everything in your house that's 18 and older needs to have a voter registration card, or you ain't eating no breakfast, you ain't getting nothing, you ain't gonna get no clothes, no more Atari, no, cause older people now, they playing all these games and stuff. Get off your tail and go register to vote. You shouldn't graduate from high school. You should have a diploma in your hand and a voter registration application also. We got work to do in this country.
Absolutely. And you bring up a good point in regards to our young people. We talked about it before. There are 41 million young adults, young people who are going to be voting this year. And that's more than enough to tip the scales. We have to educate our young people about what is happening, make sure that they understand, make sure that they're watching the debate, that we're having family discussions, that we're teaching them why this is important and why it is that we need them to go out and vote and why their vote is important. I think there needs to be time taken out for that with families across this country. Our young people need to know what is going on. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from you. We'll hear some more from Lady BB, and we're going to continue the discussion. You're listening to 92.7 WKRA FM.
Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack are dominating the airways with the Morning Takeover on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Would you like to advertise your business on the radio? We're seeking sponsors for the Morning Takeover. Space is limited, so act now. Send an email to morningtakeoverjw@gmail.com for more information. You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration.
And we are back. We have been talking about the Supreme Court ruling and what this is going to mean for the future of our country. What potentially is this going to mean for the upcoming election? We've been talking about how important it is now. It is important now more than ever, as James said before the break, that we go out and vote in numbers like never have before. Lady BB, we've got Lady BB back. I believe she had some more things she wanted to say. She gave us some really good nuggets and some really good talking points for our young people and for our listeners. Lady BB?
Yes. I feel like President Biden felt, because I, forgot some words. I had a brain fog for a moment. But when I was saying we have to vote to re-elect President Biden, yes, we have to make sure we have a majority Senate, and we have to make sure that Hakeem Jeffries become the Speaker of the House. What I want to add is the Republicans are planning, like I said, and they have been planning. If you remember the election in 2020, where Donald Trump and his Republicans and MAGA tried to fight the election over 66 times, and it was overruled and thrown out or not accepted in the different courts by both Republican judges and Democratic judges. What they're doing strategically now, they're making sure they have MAGA judges in place so that after the election, if Donald Trump is not elected, if he doesn't win and he appealed it in the court, that he'll have a mega judge that will support him. So this is in the planning page, plan what they're doing now. This is in the planning phase. Also, people need to understand that if we have President Biden, Democratic majority Senate, and the House of Representatives, we can change the numbers in the Supreme Court. We can add 4 more Supreme Court justices that will rule, that will perform the way they're supposed to perform. We could impeach the rogue Supreme Court justices. Of course, we could go for that now. However, the Republicans would have to support it, and they're not going to support that. But there are options that we do have, but we have to get out and vote. We have to vote people who have our interests at heart. The other thing is Donald Trump is unhinged. He's going to have the access to the nuclear code. Make him angry, and he'll blow up everything. And someone asks, is Putin going to interfere with this election? They're doing it already. It's happening already. When he's met with Donald Trump and still meeting with him, he's telling him how to become an autocrat. Should Donald Trump be reelected or elected? He has power over the military. He can cause a coup. He can have them assassinate whoever he wants. Whoever he wants. Total power. This country will function like Russia. He's going to go after the media. He's going to have his adversaries assassinated. He will be in office forever. There will never be another election. People have to wake up and see what's going on. And the young people, your lives will be affected for years and years to come if this man is reelected. Because Alito and the other one, I don't even want to mention his name, they will retire once Trump, and should Trump become president. And then he'll have an opportunity to put 2 more rogue justices on the Supreme Court. And this would affect our children for years and years. So we can't stress it enough. We have to get busy. We have to work. We have to make sure we vote, and we have to make sure others are out there voting. People are saying, what, if he's in office for 4 more years, I can tolerate that. He has no plans to ever leave office. This is Trump, should he win. And that's why they're saying they're going to win. They're going to cheat. He's going to do anything that he can do, and they're helping him to become president, to get elected.
Well, you certainly have given us a lot to think about, a lot to ponder. Thank you so much for coming on and for what you said. There's a real danger here. As Lady BB has said, there's a very real danger here. Again, thank you, Lady BB, for being on. We will definitely love to have you back again to speak with us. There's a very real danger here of someone who we know is unhinged. That's not something that I have to convince you of. We know that there's issues in the Supreme Court, that these justices are already receiving bribes. What has come to light in these court cases against Donald Trump is what we know of. But for everything that we know of, there's probably 2 or 3 things that we don't know of, 2 or 3 things that hasn't come to light, that has not been discovered, or hasn't been there hasn't been a whistleblower on. And so we know that Donald Trump is unhinged. We know that he throws temper tantrums. We know that what he's capable of when there were laws in place. What is he capable of with free reign to do whatever he wants? Whether we agree on the word insurrection or not, he spoke And after he spoke, immediately a mob of people went and attacked the White House. We saw the damage that was done. We saw the devastation. There was also, I believe, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe the damages that they did were certainly in the millions, probably in the billions. The fear that was instilled. The man is unstable, but yet he would have access to, as we said, nuclear codes. Ultimately, what the Supreme Court has done is they have given Donald Trump a license to implement his entire Project 2025 plan if he were to win. Check out our last live. We actually did a live, or the live before that, where we talked about how America will look if Donald Trump wins. Listen to that show. We go over in grave detail every aspect of his plan. The man said that he wanted to build a moat around the border so that those illegals trying to come into this country, to make it more difficult. But if that's comical to you, he said that he wanted to fill it with snakes and I believe alligators. I mean, something out of a Disney princess movie. He said that he would open fire on illegal immigrants. We would have ultimately detention camps. Those of you who are old enough to remember the Holocaust, and if you don't directly remember, I'm sure you were told stories about the Holocaust and how dangerous that was. What would stop Donald Trump from doing that here? Nothing. What would stop Donald Trump from taking out his adversaries? Nothing. What would stop Donald Trump from misusing and abusing our military and our law enforcement? What would stop Donald Trump from declaring martial law? Nothing. These are the things. Think about what this man has, the harmful things that this man has done. Now we're giving him the ability to do whatever he wants to do, and nothing can stop him. Let's get back to some of our listeners. So one of our listeners said, when Mitch McConnell refused to have a vote on the nomination of Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court, Trump was allowed to nominate 3 justices. This essentially stacked the court. There was a conversation going on about stacking. And so stacking, someone said to me, stacking means adding new justices, making appointments isn't stacking. But ultimately what we saw is that we refused to make a vote. Okay, so now I'm just going to nominate 3 more. The Supreme Court is already getting bribes for the decisions right now. We're hearing from our listeners. Another listener said that's Roe v. Wade. That's how Roe v. Wade was overturned. There was a 6-3 majority in favor of so-called conservatives. Another listener said Judge Merchan should send him to jail at sentencing and give him the maximum penalty. This listener goes by the name of I Said What I Said, and yeah, I said the same thing. Another listener said, I don't like Trump, but he was president. He was president. We didn't vote him in. He was president. And as a former president, so here's the thing, is this is not just about Donald Trump being in office, okay? Because there's a possibility he may not get elected. This immunity applies to present and former presidents. So even if Donald Trump did not get elected, he would still have immunity. He would, as a former president, which means he could still potentially try to do a number of dangerous things. Another listener said his followers agree with him, though. That's the scary part. They feel they will be excluded from his madness. They're wrong. They'll be included as well. I agree with that. James, what are your thoughts on what some of our listeners have said? What are your thoughts on what Lady Bibi said? I want to hear from you.
I say that older people, we can do this. We're saying the younger people, yes, the young people need to get their act together and pay attention to what's going on around them, because we make such emphasis about them. They're going to be inheriting these decisions in the near future and into future. They're going to be inheriting this country with all of its flaws and all of the things that we can say that are wrong with it. our democracy has been working. It's been working. It needs improvement. That's why we need to make sure and ensure that future generations will have an opportunity to have the same freedoms and liberties that we so far have. The decisions that we make in the voting booth, folks, I can't emphasize this enough. We got to. It is imperative of us to get out. And well, I don't care if you have to take a vacation day or if you just have to tell your boss, hey, listen, I got to go vote, or give me a little time, or whatever the case may be. Those states that have early voting and voting by mail, or whatever the case may be, to get you some early to vote early or everything, do everything that you can. Make up in your mind that you can't wait until that door open. Make sure that they have not any trouble, but then they run out of ballots. So they got to find more ballots, because we're not going to let this happen. Also, that's very important that Lady BB says, the congressional races. We have senators and the whole House is up for re-election. Folks, this can be stopped with the right regular. See, we got three branches of government. We're talking about the executive and the judicial, but often we leave out the legislative. If we have like-minded people that are willing to help save this democracy, we got to vote down ballot. Yeah, vote for president. Make sure that you vote for president, but also vote for your local representatives. Even in our local area where our signal is, we have a contest going on, and find out who these candidates are and what they stand for. Right now, we know that the Republican Party stands for, and they are all in one huddle, and they're going to throw all of their eggs in the basket for this person. They don't care what he's done, who he's talked about, how many indictments, how many felonies. And it's just, it's terrible. We don't care what he is. We just want him. And if this happens, the day after Election Day will be a sad day if we put this man, that tyrant, Mr. Orange Hair, into office. It would be terrible. We would really cease to be the country that we are. If we lose the Congress, where there's no balances, we already we're losing in the Supreme Court. Somebody said, well, I don't believe in stacking the court. We got to do something. We got to do something in order to stop this hemorrhage of democracy. We're hemorrhaging right now, and the world leaders around the world have been talking about it, saying, what has really happened to the standard bearer of democracy in Paris, France. They're having problems over there with they call them the right wing person that doesn't know anything about government or anything about how the country runs. Another Donald Trump that's going to upset and turn up the French government. And they're really nervous right about now. Where are we going? I have some other views that I don't want to express, but let me tell you something. I still believe in the people of the United States of America. I still believe that there's somebody that's not drank the Kool-Aid, if you know what I'm saying. I believe that there's some people out there, majority of the people, the same majority and greater, that put in the leaders that have been trying to guard our democracy. He hasn't won yet now. He hasn't won. He has not won. He does not have that power, and we don't have to give it to him. We can stop this, but we can't sitting around like we can have discussions on the street. Get off the corner and go find a voter registration form. Get off the corner and go and educate yourself and try to find out what's really going on. Educate you. Stop partying, stop jigging, stop twerking, stop selfieing, stop trying to be superstars. I'm talking to our community. Stop all this foolishness and find out where your future is going to come from. What's going to happen in the future with you. And as we as we wind down, I can't emphasize this enough. You have the power. We, the people, good, bad, or indifferent, We, the people, can stop this madness, and we can stop it by, first of all, making a proper selection for president. Second of all, making sure that your senators, U.S. senators, and representatives in Congress do the things that are right and make the provisions to put in place stop gaps that will stop this takeover of our democracy. We're really at the brinks of something that I thought I would never see, but we can stop this from happening. And if we just band together, you have a right to vote. If you're 18 years or older, get in touch with our station, get in touch or email us or let us know, and we'll try to help you out to find a way to register to vote. Don't be afraid. We got to take the kid gloves off, and we got to stand up for what we believe in, and that is a democracy for the people and by the people.
I totally agree. One of our listeners said America needs to learn from 1932 Germany. Here's the thing. There's a lot at stake. I've heard James say that, we the people, we have the power, we can intervene, we can stop this. I also believe that this country is standing by to see what is President Biden going to do? What is the DNC going to do to ensure that we don't end up with a country that ultimately has a king in power? That is not how the United States works. Is that what you want? Do you want a king? Is that what the people of America, and I'm talking about Democrats and Republicans, I'm talking about those who support Donald Trump, is that what you want? Do you want a king? Do you want a dictator? Because Donald Trump has said, without saying so many times, that is ultimately what he wants for this country. It's not about what the people want. It's about what he wants. As one of our listeners said, our vote counts. Our vote is powerful. I think for too long, we've been made to believe that our vote doesn't count, especially when we vote and the person we voted for doesn't get elected. Your vote is powerful. It could be that one vote that could swing it left or right. So as James and Lady BB and many have said, everyone has to get out and vote. If you do not want to end up with a king ruling this country, doing whatever he wants to do, how he wants to do it, and I can tell you it would not be in favor of the needs of the poor community, the Black community. When I say the poor community is not limited to Black people. There are white poor in this country. There are Hispanic poor in this country. Believe it or not, there are Asian poor in this country. I grew up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I grew up watching and walking past homeless Asian people. There are poor people from every ethnic background you can think of in this country. And I do not believe that their needs are what Donald Trump has on his mind and on his heart. His goal is to make the rich richer. That's his goal. His goal is to fill his own pockets. The presidency, the first time, was very profitable. He has been dying. His mouth has been wet with desire to get back into the presidency ever since. Another listener said the Constitution needs to be updated, and don't just vote every 4 years, vote in every election. Absolutely. The presidential election, the primaries, that's every 4 years. But there are elections that go on in between that. And this is one of the biggest takeaways, again, from the event that I attended last week, is that we need more education. And maybe that is something that we can consider doing, James, on the show, is to dedicate a segment. We need more education on the various levels.
Yes, we do.
Of government, so that people can understand what issues and things are handled at the presidential level, what's handled at the local level, what's handled at the state level, and what happens in between. We need, as I said before, we need to start making demands about what we want as in our Black communities across the country. Okay, because what we've been told is that we're not important. What we've been told is that we are illegitimate. What we've been told is that we're not educated, we're not smart, we're not important. But what we're learning is that we very much are. Okay, let's be clear. Black labor built this country, and it was slave labor at that. Wasn't voluntary. I don't think anybody really volunteered for what Black people went through for 300-400 years in this country. We built this country, and the same strength that ran through our ancestors' veins run through our veins now. We are powerful as a community. I think the biggest disservice to our community is breaking us down and making us think that we're not. If we band together, if we come out and vote like never before, we can ensure the future of this country in the hands of a person who's not trying to take over and control everything. Another listener said we need civic classes back in our schools. I agree with that. Another listener said he will send every undocumented person back. He will send every undocumented person back, whether they are a dreamer or a migrant. Too many people talk about voting when it's time to vote for president. Yeah, because we get on the voting train when it's time to vote in a new president. But I agree with this listener. We need to stay on the voting train. We need to keep these discussions going throughout the year in and year out, not just when it's time to elect the president, because honestly, by then it is nearly too late. Another listener said that is why the South is taking away history in schools. Well, that's going to be another conversation for another show, talking about our schools, talking about school choice, talking about the education that our children are receiving. Because, for example, my son attended private school here in Georgia this past year. And for history, his history was Georgia history, not American history, not world history, 8th grade. And they chose to educate them on Georgia history. And that's assuming that as an adult, he's going to choose to stay in this country. So when you say they're taking away history in these schools and they're not really teaching these kids about what really happened, and you have so many kids who still think that slavery is a myth, it's a shame. But as I said, that's another show for another time. We need to continue these conversations. Justice Sotomayor said, looking beyond the fate of this particular prosecution, the long-term consequences of today's decision are stark. The court effectively creates and has created a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding of this country. There is a reason why this country was founded, so that one person would not have absolute power. One person would not have full control, because the people who came to this country to build this country, I can't say founded this country because there were other people here when they founded this land. But for the sake of using that term, the people that ultimately set up government in this country came from a country where it didn't work. They understood what it meant to be under a king and to be at the mercy of one person making all the decisions. She says this new official acts immunity now lies about like a loaded weapon. She's calling this official acts immunity. And we know that anything Donald Trump does, they're going to call it an official act. And it's not just about Donald Trump, because even if Donald Trump were elected, technically it's only supposed to be for 4 years. However, we know in reality, he would try to extend it long beyond that, but there could be anybody in office. She says it's like a loaded weapon for any president that wishes to place his own interest, his own political survival, his own financial gain above the interest of the nation. And we have a man running for president who is a convicted felon, 34 felony counts, who's already done this. He's already showed that his interests are more important than anyone else's. His own political survival is more important than the survival of the people. His own financial gain is more important than your ability to be able to support yourself financially in this country. James, give us your final thoughts.
Well, let me make an announcement before I get to that, and it's going to be real brief. WKRA will be in with me, along with other correspondents. Will be discussing, and actually at the DNC, We're working out the logistics of such to bring you that special broadcasting from Chicago, and we're asking you to tune in and also send your questions and your comments that you would like for me to ask our Mississippi delegation and the delegation of the South of what do they think about the current events that are happening and what they're potentially going to do. There are going to be a lot of interviews from a lot of national figures. I've gotten some confirmations for interviews, and Wisdom's daughter is going to assist us in our special coverage when we do come on for the DNC in August. We're making those preparations. In saying that, I have to echo the sentiments of Justice Sotomayor. Let me also take my hat off to Justice Kagan and Justice Jackson, who we see that have those reasonable voices on the Supreme Court. It is not over, folks. It doesn't mean that the world is coming to an end or anything like that. We're not saying that. We're saying that this decision that was made in preparation for their thinking that this man is going to get back into office, they're just paving the way. By them giving this decision, I know that there's some things that can be diabolically done now because that's an opinion. We have three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. There are some checks and balances. Folks, we got an opportunity to turn this situation around, put a stop to this dictatorship that's coming and this kingship. We're not coronating no kings on January 20th of next year. We're not coronating any kind of disarrayment that might come. And I believe that this democracy is going to stand good, bad, or indifferent. And Wisdom, as you said also before, and as Lady BB, thank you very much for coming on this morning. We have to get out and vote. Please, people, it is so imperative. And as Wisdom was saying, we're going to be drilling this and we're going to be reminding you often that you have to vote. And we're going to be talking about it and bringing other guests on to express their views and to encourage us to vote. And Wisdom, forgive me because I know that, and I'm not making any apologies, I'm very passionate about what we're saying. It's really, really imperative, folks, that we get out and vote. Call your local party, Democrat, somebody. Call somebody. Your county clerks. Find out, or your cities. Go and find out what it's required for you to vote. And if you're not sure of your voting precincts or your status in voting, there is state agencies, the secretaries of state or the election boards can help you and guide you and direct you if you're registered or not. Please make sure, start now. Don't wait. Start now. And if you start now, I believe that things will be done. Wisdom.
Absolutely. You know, here's one major consequence of the Supreme Court decision. So, number one, we have a Supreme Court that's evidently divided, right? They're divided. But this decision with giving current and former presidents, which includes former President Donald Trump, substantial immunity and immunity from prosecution, this is going to delay the trial on the case against him on charges of plotting to subvert the 2020 election. It's going to push that, as I said earlier, past the upcoming election. And if that happens and Donald Trump wins, he could order the Justice Department to drop the charges, which means he could walk away free. There are many saying on various social media platforms that this ruling gives the president now almost a license to commit crimes and get away with it. And there are those who are joking. It is no laughing matter. We need to wake up, as many of our listeners have said. We need to be smart about this thing. The Democrats need to put a very robust plan in place on how they're going to proceed forward to ensure that we are able to protect democracy in this country. Because one thing that we know, Trump has no interest in democracy. He's made that very clear. He's made that very, very clear. He's already given us an idea of what our country would be like if he were to win. I think it's important for you to educate yourself on that, because this is not one of these situations where you should just listen to what comes out of Donald Trump's mouth, because the man has been caught in numerous lies. Educate yourself on his plan and ask yourself, can you live with that? Can you live in a country where Jim Crow returns? Can you live in a country based on a Jim Crow type of culture and atmosphere? Can you live in a country with a man who is operating like a king and a dictator? Can you live in a country where you no longer have civil rights at all? No voting rights at all? You're at the mercy of your president. Is that the kind of country you want to live in? You have to ask yourself, what kind of America do you see for yourself? And you need to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because once again, those of you who think that you're going to benefit from some type of stimulus check and Donald Trump is going to really, really help you, you may want to think again. Because Donald Trump has shown us that he's only concerned about himself. He's only concerned about the Black community when it makes him look good and it's to his advantage. So a lot more conversations need to happen. Have conversations in your communities, in your schools, in your churches, in your cities, and your towns. Thank you so much for listening. We have work to do, people. As James has said, get out and vote. Make sure you vote. If you've never voted before, make sure you vote this time. It's imperative, because our America as we know it is in jeopardy. Donald Trump has said he wants to make America great again. And making America great again means turning it on its head. We've got work to do, people. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back here tomorrow, same time. We want to hear from you. Continue the conversation down in the comments. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. And until next time, make sure you get out and vote.
You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Breaking news, current events, and trending stories on The Morning Takeover at 9.